And I'm coming to the third and very important element of design that has to do with communication. Legislation is a special form of communication, and communication involves the message itself, so how clear and how articulate and how accessible the message is, but it also involves the recipient. So you will not deliver a message in the same way if you are addressing a Nobel Prize winner, an illiterate citizen, or a businessman, or a judge that is educated in legislation. So knowing who you are addressing is a very important function when legislation is being designed. Every law includes a number of messages that address different audiences. And some of these audiences, actually the main audiences, are first of all the citizens who are affected by legislation. So citizens who acquire new rights through the law, or who are subjected to new obligations, whether it is tax, whether it is a new benefit that they can claim, whether it is provisions or procedures that they have to adhere to. It is professionals like accountants or architects that work with the law but are not educated in law. And there are professionals who are educated in law, like lawyers and judges, whose work is to implement or interpret legislation. It also addresses other groups like civil servants and different agencies and implementing agencies that will have to undertake action in order to implement legislation. So you can see that although this question might sound quite obvious, it is actually not. And for every new law that you are designing, you need to think about the features of these groups. Who are the legislative audiences that I am addressing? It is a very important question. Challenges when it comes to communicating legislation have to do with the use of language, with inconsistencies both within one law but also between different pieces of legislation, with the use of very specialized language or jargon, with how understandable your text is, and many other factors. So language is the main medium for communicating the law, but it is not the only one. Communication is a broad issue. Every statute is unique, and all available options need to be explored depending on the legislative audiences. Think about road traffic signs. Actually, these road traffic signs visualize a law from the Traffic Act. And it is a way of making this rule accessible to everyone without having to read the law itself, and without having to even know how to read and write. So the array of tools that designers can use to communicate legislative messages can be quite broad and goes beyond language. It includes the structure of legislation, titles, headings, syntax, grammar, graphic illustrations and visualizations, as I just said, even tables, examples. There are also quite innovative approaches, like the layered approach that Professor Xanthaki put forward, where she structures a text based on the different audiences that it addresses and tries to organize the messages in a way that they are where the groups can easily find them and understand them. In other jurisdictions, simplified outlines are used in the electronic versions of legislation, and these are description of the key aspects of a part of the law in language that is easy to understand, so that the readers of legislation can decide whether this is something they need to engage further with. So there are different tools and different approaches and different solutions, to the dilemma of what is the best way to actually communicate the legislative messages in the law. But all of them revolve around the question of legislative audiences. We need to know who our legislation addresses.